Hi, my name is Kunle Olulode. I'm the director of Voice for Change England. My journey into the sector really started when I was still in the public sector, working in the private sector. I'd always been involved in organizing representation of Black workers and staff in organizations. And that meant sometimes dealing with disciplinaries, grievances, people who had immigration status problems, people who were finding themselves in situations where they'd maybe been restructured out of jobs and facing all kinds of internal disputes in the workplace. I joined Voice for Change in 2013 as its director and became intrigued by the situation of the range of different issues that Voice for Change had to address, everything from women's rights, disability, to infrastructure development, and making sure that the BAME sector within the voluntary and community sector, their interests were represented with central government. One of the most important documents that we produced was a document called Bridging the Gap, a report commissioned by the Bearing Foundation to look at the funding experiences of BAME organizations. And it's particularly important to me because many of the recommendations of that document are still shaping some of the policy issues, some of the direction of funders and foundations today. In particular, the foundation of what was called the Funders Alliance, which is now morphed into a Racial Justice Alliance. And in addition to that, the focus on giving BAME groups the opportunity to really explain their stories, their journey in relation to how funding was impacting on them, or should I say the lack of funding in a number of cases. So what was, I think has particularly remained significant, and what was interesting at the time of the publication of the report was the fact that core funding still very much remains an issue. So project funding, i.e. the idea that you sign up to a project and out of that project, you need to also cover your core costs, was not always possible given the amounts of money involved. But many groups, and some big organizations in particular, found themselves having to take on more and more project work in order to cover their core costs. Not a particularly healthy move. As some organizations found out, in doing that, you quite often ended up with cash flow problems in the most dramatic sense. So you could have a very healthy balance sheet in terms of what the turnover looked like, sometimes even in the millions. But the point of it all is that it's built on sand, and it just takes one domino to fall for everything to collapse. And that's certainly what happened to a number of organizations. And indeed, ironically enough, when the report came out, Bridging the Gap, it was the week that Kids Company went bust. And similarly, the principles of what I've just outlined applied in that situation too. So we found ourselves being asked by journalists across the BBC and elsewhere about our thoughts about Kids Company rather than our actual report when it came out. But as I said, I think the report still stands the test of time.